And if you happen to be visiting with us, we every 2 years, the Lord has enabled us to send a team to a sister church in Managua, Nicaragua, who's part of Great Commission Latin America, which is part of kind of our larger association. And the size of the team varies, and God always does different things in different ways, and so we go down there. We want to share the gospel in whatever we're doing, and so as we do give out items, the items you guys donated and so on, and as we deliver all kinds of things to people, we're always giving the gospel message. And I feel like that's really important. I know it's really important to the church there. And so anyway, we're going to just have people share. I have to open up my laptop to get the slideshow up there. And they don't even know, that one. And they don't even know the order I put it. I don't even remember the order I put it in because that was, I don't know. I've been up late a lot lately. And last night, just the brain couldn't shut down. My body was like, you're exhausted. Go to sleep, but wasn't happening. So anyway, everybody I'm sure is tired, but hopefully they got some mucho cafe today. And there it is. Yeah, morning cheers there with the coffee. So anyway, I'm going to stop talking. I'll hand the microphone to Phil, but I remember. I think Linda is first. So as I do remember that because when I was working at home, I said, we'll put Linda first. I'll pass that down there.
So maybe while he's putting that up, because I have no idea what order you put pictures in as far as what I'm going to talk about first. But one thing I wanted to just mention to you that don't really know what it's like down there, it's totally different than here. When you're in the capital city there are houses that are more like our houses. But a lot of the houses, even as you go like one street from the city, you're on dirt roads. Many houses have dirt floors, tin roofs. There's a lot of open areas to the outside. It's just not like here. It was funny because today I got in the shower. I went to get in the shower. I turned on the water and I put it where I usually do here at home. And I was like, oh, that's too hot. We took cold showers all week. Little things that we take for granted, they don't always have. And so just realizing that it's, a whole different way of living down there. This is some of the people from the church right here in this picture as we were getting ready to leave. Here, over there on the right-hand side, you can see some of the gifts that you guys sent down. We called it the Loaves and Fishes Miracle because we had a smaller team this year, but we kept going and going and going and making bags. They got like 100. We put everything in like what we would call trash bags to hand out there. And he had 100 in one set, and he had to go get more because we had so much stuff to give away, which was really great. And they told us over and over again it was perfect because we had the towels, the soap, the toothpaste, the toothbrushes, the blankets for the hospital. And some people, are you guys going to talk about the hospital? Yes? Okay. You'll hear more about the hospital. You'll realize it is nothing like here. So the care, you have to provide everything yourself pretty much. So they'll talk about that later. I won't get into that. So it was perfect. So thank you so much for all of the gifts that we took down. The soccer balls were great too. The kids loved those. So even though you guys stayed here, you were an integral part of our trip. The money, the things you sent, everything, the prayers. You don't realize how much we appreciate your prayers because, especially Greg and I, after being sick. So that was interesting too. Up there on the right-hand side too, you'll also see us talking to a girl. This was the last day that that was Friday, I guess. We went out to the university there. It's really cool because here, people don't really want to talk to you. There, almost everybody will talk to you. A few people will say no, but most people want to talk to you. This girl right here that we're talking to in the upper right-hand corner, actually, Katie and Michaela had shared the gospel with her, and she prayed to receive Christ. And so a bunch of kids had gone back into their classes. I shouldn't call them kids, young adults. And so we were trying to figure out who we were going to talk to next. So we went up to her and found out that she'd already talked to somebody from our group. And so I was thinking, okay, we won't probably talk to her. And Walter's like, no, talk to her. I'm like, okay. So, I didn't really know what was going to happen, but I was just thinking, God is in control. And she actually had a question. She was like, but what about the good works? She just still didn't quite have it. And so I was thinking, God knows what he's doing, because we went back to her and we were able to explain, the gift of salvation. It's a gift. It's free. You don't have to do anything. And so that was really cool that we got to go back and explain everything to her. So God is sovereign all the time. He's very good. The other thing that we did, which was a little different this time, there was a woman from the church that has colon cancer. So some of the money from the trip that you guys donated, we took to buy medical supplies for her, because, again, you have to supply a lot of the things that you need. And she's a believer, but some of her family, they're not. And she's got a really great attitude about everything. But her name's Karen, which is the name of my sister. Easy for me to remember to pray for her. But I was just thinking, we take so much for granted. And so just realize that everything that you guys sent just was great for them. And so Karen could use your prayers, because the prognosis there is not real great for her. She's on her, is it third round of, yeah, so she could use your prayers. So I think that's it for me.
Hi. So I'm Katie. I don't actually normally attend this church, but I was very lucky to be able to go on this trip. I've actually been friends with Michaela for a while now, and she's been told me about it last time you guys went on this trip, and asked me if I wanted to go this time, and I was very excited to participate and go. So some of the photos up here are actually from what we called like the tourist day that we did in Managua. We went to see a volcano. And on this left is like some of the people from the church that were so gracious to us and helped us with everything we needed. And the bottom right photo is actually us leaving yesterday at the airport, and we were all really sad. But it's actually funny because Caleb and Michaela and I were taking a selfie in the back car, and we're like, Jacob is never in photos. So we're like, Jacob, let's all take a photo together. So that was fun. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the hospital, like Linda was mentioning, because I believe that was probably my most eye-opening experience we had in Nicaragua. Like she said, the hospitals there are nothing like we have here. And it's just one of those experiences that you'll never forget. We were in the morning, we were in the oncology unit. And it was actually the morning where Greg, Linda, Philip, and Charlie all were sick and could not go. So it was just the four youngest. And we were ready to take charge and go share the gospel. And I remember it was Michaela, I, and then one of our translators, Anna, were in the female unit. And we were just talking to people, praying with them. And these two doctors came up from the hospital and were like, we want to translate for you guys. And Anna was like, okay, Katie, you can go with them. And I'm like standing there looking at Michaela, I'm like, by myself? Like I was really nervous because I already felt so like out of my comfort zone because I, kind of just didn't know what to say. But I felt like God was telling me, you need to go. You need to go do this. You need to step out and talk to these people because they need you to do it. So I went with them and I talked to some of the most amazing people I'd ever met, some people that are really struggling, and they were telling me, you guys being here is a blessing to us. And it really opened my eyes to what God was having us do that day. And I talked to a 17-year-old girl who received Christ that day, and she was so gracious and so kind to me. And for how hard and the things that they're struggling with, they were unbelievably gracious to us. And I'm so grateful for that experience, and I'm so grateful for God for opening my eyes to that and humbling me and showing me the works that he's doing.
All right. So first of all, thanks again for all your support, especially the financial support, because we wouldn't have been able to go if it weren't for you, because it's kind of a big ticket, and you fielded a big team here. So thank you for that. I think for me, it's just really refreshing, as it always is, to just see the humility of the people in Nicaragua and their openness to the gospel. And just to see the power of the gospel at work down there. When we started out, it seems like every other person was praying with us to receive Christ, and it's just incredible. All the people that came to him, I stopped counting after 17 people with our team, and there was, I don't know if we were doing 2 or 3 teams when we were going out. Was it 2? But anyway, just multiply that by whatever. Plus, we did seven classes in the schools, so where we shared and prayed with them. So it's just exhilarating to get to share the good news and get comfortable sharing it. I think the most heartfelt conversion for me was this guy Roman, who was in the hospital. And again, this hospital, it looks a lot nicer in the pictures than it was, but there was literally a stray dog walking through the hallway in the hospital, and their dogs down there are like not in good shape and not pretty. The floors were dirty. There was like dried blood and stuff on the floor, and it's open to the outside, so there's no screens in the windows, even no AC. And everybody's just packed in there, and it just felt so sad and hopeless. And this guy, Roman, he seemed like he was a pretty young guy. He looked like he was probably 30s at the oldest. And he had colon cancer as well. And I don't know much about colon cancer, but I don't think the prognosis is very good for people with that. So we shared with him. He was very responsive and accepted the Lord, and I just was so encouraged to be able to give him hope, and we told him we look forward to seeing him again one day, and he thanked us profusely for coming and bringing the word. A lot of the people have some faith in God and some religious background, but they just don't understand the gospel clearly, so it's great to be able to bring that. And I think the most meaningful lesson for me was just seeing all the poverty and difficulty that they have. And most people don't have AC. It's so hot down there. It's humid, and they don't have AC in their cars, and the whole hospital thing. The families that were staying, a couple of families that were brought their family members for treatment had traveled from the coast. They didn't have money to even get back. They didn't know how they were going to get back, and they're literally staying in like a shack, like a tin roof shack, and they're all just, it's like wall-to-wall beds in there, and they're all just sleeping in there together. So it makes me want to just never want to complain again about anything, because we're so rich here, and sometimes we feel like a spoiled brat. So I feel like that's the main thing the Lord was telling me, is just, be thankful and don't complain, because people have it a lot worse. So, but it was awesome. I really appreciate all the support and the chance to go.
Okay. 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 For me, I think it was a little bit unique in that I've actually lived down in South America before, and it's kind of a strange thing for me is that when I'm up here, I'm kind of a quiet person, but when I'm down there, it's just like a whole new me. So probably people saw me in a whole different way down there than they've ever seen me before. So a little closer. Oh, sorry. Okay. Almost eat it. Okay. Like an ice cream cone. So anyway, I had a really, really good time just kind of like experiencing that whole thing again. And but there were some things that still shocked me. I've never been to Nicaragua before, and I was kind of shocked that it was. I know I lived in Chile before, and I was shocked that Nicaragua looked to me more like Haiti than it did to Chile. And I still liked it. I still like the culture. The culture is still very similar, but the poverty level was just beyond what I expected. I kind of considered it to be more like a 1970s Chile, if that makes any sense. But it, well, you can't fathom that. Yeah. It was pretty rough. Even the schools, to me, some people have talked about the hospital probably because it was more recent than the schools, but the schools were just these like individual buildings that were all one floor. They're just basically cement block, tin roofs, open windows, very, very hot, and they have school like we do in their what they call their winter, which is right now, which is I can't even understand how that's winter. It was 90-something degrees there when we were there the first 2 days. Extremely, extremely hot in those rooms. And then when it started to rain, you couldn't hear each other talk. How do people study like that? It just amazes me. In the hospitals, and we went to their version of what we would call the Ronald McDonald House. And, oh, my goodness. They basically had the same thing, just a building with the tin roof, and I wouldn't have even used that for a barn. That thing was so horrible, and that was where the beds were, and outside in the patio it was an outhouse for a bathroom that everybody shared, and the kitchen was nothing but a dirt floor with a tin roof over it, no walls, and it was pretty rough. That day, I went back to Walter, and I was just like, Walter, I just really appreciate what you're doing. Walter's the doctor, and he has a clinic there in the church. And I said to Walter, I said, we need to help you make sure that your clinic is doing more. It can grow. It can have more of what it needs. And he's just got very, very basic things in his clinic, and but yet it's clean. At least it's clean. So anyway, I asked him what he needed the most and what was the one thing he really desired to have. And it was something so simple, something that we just take for granted in our doctor's offices, and that was a wall unit that has the ear, nose, and throat things to check. Something so basic. And so I looked it up right there, and it's going to cost between $600 and $1,000, but I figured, okay, I can figure out how to get that for him. And so that's something that I'm going to take as a personal mission to make sure he gets. So I don't know how yet, but it'll get there. So yes, they got a team going down in September that's a medical team, and so if that's something that I think or at least I need to make sure. Okay. Okay. He says if you want to give to that, that's fine. So, I wasn't going to ask for that. But anyway, so I guess that's pretty much it for me.
And you did some translating for us.
I did do some translating. They surprised me on that on Friday. We had a translator up there on Friday for everybody. And then when it was our turn for me and Charlie to go up there, our translator took off. And I expected him to come back when it was Charlie's turn, but he didn't. So, who's next?
So this was my second time going, and I wasn't really sure what to expect. I thought it would be like kind of similar to the last one, but in a way it was, in a way it wasn't. We went to a lot of different places compared to the first time around. But I'm going to talk about the hospital. I know it's not up there, but I didn't get a picture of it. So we went to the hospital. I was with Katie and Anna, and we were going to like bed to bed, and we noticed like this girl, or this woman that was like looking at us like while we were like going to the other people first. And once we got up to her, she like looked at Anna, our translator, and she was like, I recognize you guys. Like, I've definitely seen you guys before. And she said that we came 2 years ago at the hospital and shared the gospel with her. So just to like think that like she hasn't been at the hospital those whole 2 years that we were gone, but she had to come back for a surgery. And just to know that like this world is so small that we could see her again. And like I felt kind of bad because I didn't like totally recognize her right away, but like she like knew exactly who we were and exactly that same day when we came back. And she said that, and she wanted us like to pray for her surgery. So that was like a really cool experience, just to know that like the small things that we do go a super long way. So that was really cool. And also just like everyone has said about the hospital, it was really hard to like see people and be there and talk to people just because of how hard they have it down there. Most of the girls that we talked to were all diagnosed with leukemia, and so that's like, we all know the prognosis of that and stuff, and especially since they're not in America, it's not really a good chance and stuff. So just being able to talk to all of them and give them hope and stuff was really great. And I even got to share, there was a mom and a daughter, or her daughter had leukemia, and her mom was just asking us to pray for a miracle. And so I shared with her about my dad and how he has cancer, and so I just got to share with them and just tell them that like they're not alone. And so that really helped them, I think, and it was really good getting to pray with them and giving that hope and stuff. And then I guess going back to the school the first few days, just like being able to talk to like the kids, it means like the world to them when we come down there. They get so excited, even though they have no idea what we're saying. They get so excited, they start like screaming at me in Spanish. I'm like, I don't know what you're saying, but okay. And so it was really cool just to be able to share the gospel with them and see all of them like trying to understand what we're saying and just how excited they are to do that. And we gave a whole bunch of soccer balls to them, and that meant a lot. When we went to the high school, we would do like questions afterwards, and like we would get like 5 volunteers, and their award would be a soccer ball. And they were like, just how excited they were just to get a soccer ball was like crazy. I mean, like soccer's like a huge thing down there and stuff, but like all their friends were like so jealous. They're like, oh, I should have volunteered so I could get a soccer ball. But it was really cool just to see that like just that small thing can mean a world to them. Which also brings me to the university. When we were at the university, it was kind of cool talking to people there, just because like they were similar to my age and everything, and just how open they were was really cool. Because I feel like if you go to probably university here in America, like they will probably walk away from you or say, no, I don't want to talk to you. So just having them like actually want to talk to you and listen was really cool. And I got an opportunity to talk to 4 of the guys that were there, and 3 of them accepted Christ that day, and that was really neat experience. And then another guy that we talked to, we handed out baseballs at the university because we ran out of soccer balls. But yeah, I pulled it out of my bag, and he was like, his whole face is lit up, like he was just so excited. And I'm like, he's like 19 years old, and like this small thing like meant the world to him. So that was really cool to see. But I would have to say, from what I took out / learned this week, last time I went, it was like a huge thing for me just to trust in God and see what was, and trust in Him and like what's going to happen in my life and everything like that. But this time around, I mean, I really had to trust in God going this year, because I was just nervous with everything that was going on with my dad and stuff. Being away from home was hard. But God really opened my eyes this week, and it was a lot different just because we have a lot smaller group this time around, so I feel like we had to get out of our comfort zone and talk to more people and stuff. So I think compared to all my other mission trips I've gone on to, I have definitely grew in that aspect. And like I've never prayed with so many people before that I did not know, so that was really cool. So I think I just really want to be able to bring that back to America and be able to be open and be able to talk to people and not be afraid, because people do want to listen. It might be harder here, but I think that's something that America really needs. So that's what I learned. So sorry.
If our names up there at the same time, do we talk at the same time? Yeah, that was fun. That's a funny story. Yeah. Yeah, no, we, as you can see, we both play for the national team now. Yeah. No, I'll go ahead and go first. Yeah, this was my first time going. My mom and my brother Sam had gone before, and they had told me everything. They told me nearly everything that they could about their experiences down there and just how it was. But that was just not. It didn't prepare me all the way. I kind of thought I knew what was gonna happen, but it was just way different once you got down there. And just so many things that were different that I didn't expect. The conditions of the hospital and the school and everything that everybody's talked about so far is just so true. It's just when we went to the oncology ward, we talked to in my group. It was me, Jake, and our translator Aaron, and so we talked to 4 people in the oncology ward, because that was all we had time for, because we talked for so long, which was fantastic. And all 4 of them accepted Jesus into their heart that day, which was an amazing thing. And there were 2 people that really stood out in that group. One, his name was Alexander. He looked I think he was about 16. And he was just sitting in his bed. And some of the patients had family members sitting by, just holding their hands or comforting them. But Alexander didn't have anybody, and there were a lot of people like that in the hospital. And just when we walked in, he just looked at us, and he just had this big old grin. And he was just so happy. Just that we were there. Just that we were there to talk to him, to talk to everybody in the hospital. And he was just... He was awesome, and we gave him the gift. We gave him some like a towel and some toothbrush and some toothpaste, and he was just so happy the whole time. And just everybody in the hospital was so appreciative of us coming and just talking to them, and they were just so happy and welcoming to the idea of the gospel, which was amazing. The man that we talked to after that, he was quite a bit older, in his 70s or 80s, and he was deaf, or mostly deaf. He had lost a lot of his hearing because he worked in construction his whole life. And so when we were talking to him, we were trying to say stuff, and then it would be translated, and then he could kind of not hear it because he was kind of deaf. But the message got through, and he was telling us his story. And so he had worked construction his whole life, like on the roads and things like that. And then he had started his own business, but because he said because of financial reasons and things like that, everything he had was taken away from him. And he had nothing left. And then he was diagnosed with cancer. And so that's where we found him was in the hospital. And while he was telling us this, he starts crying, and he almost starts shouting almost when he's telling us the story, because he was so angry, so passionate about everything that had happened to him, and it was just so sad for him. And just that experience was just amazing, being able to share and connect with this man who's lived this life, and being able to share the gospel with him, this good news that it seems like he hasn't had enough of recently. And so being able to share that with him was just an amazing gift. That I want to be able to do again with all the other people there in Nicaragua. And so I want to go back so badly. But just, yeah, everybody there is just so accepting of the gospel, and it's so different from here. But that shouldn't change how we evangelize and how we talk to people. Because down there, people talk with such hospitality. We go in, we knock on a door, we go in, we go, buenos, and see if anybody's there. If they're there, they let us in, they unlock their gates, they let us in, they give us everything. They give us seats, they have us sit down. If it's maybe only a couple chairs, that's all they have, but they give it to us, and it's just amazing. And they're just so ready and accepting of the gospel. And so it's very exciting. And one of the other things that I just loved about being there was how passionate they were in the church. And in the first worship service, I was blown away because everybody starts clapping and everybody's singing at the top of their lungs. It was really loud. I was like, I didn't expect it to be this loud, but they were rocking out. I was like, this is my kind of church. I was like, if I spoke Spanish, I think I'd stay here. This would be great. Yeah. And so it was just such an amazing experience, and I just hope that we can bring, hopefully, everybody in this team, I feel, probably feels a little bit about the same about this, but being able to bring that kindness and that passion back, and just that's what I want to be able to do with coming back from this, and I've just learned so much from this trip. Okay, it's your turn.
Hola. It took me at least 2 days to break the habit of saying things in English. Even though everybody here would greet everybody saying hola, I would still say hello. And it took a solid 2 days for me to break that habit. So I've gone to a conference called LT in North Carolina for several years. And for those that don't know, that's a high school conference for high schoolers and first-year college students. And over there, it's very, very scheduled. This is when lunch is. This is where it's at. This is where you sleep. This is when you sleep. It's very scheduled. There's a lot to do. And that's kind of the American way. You have lots to do, and you're scheduled out, and you plan things ahead of time. And over there, it's very relaxed. There was one day where I think the four of us were asleep on some church chairs, and I came to about 10 minutes after we were supposed to leave and go start sharing, and I was like, oh, we got to start going, and the translator's like, don't worry, we'll leave in like 20 minutes. It's okay. And I was like, oh, okay. And a lot of people have jobs there, but after work, I know we tend to either do yard work or we have other things planned and watch Netflix, and because we all got it scheduled out what we want to do. But like these guys were saying, everybody that we came up to, we didn't even have to say what we were talking about. We just asked if they had time and wanted to talk, and they, yeah, sure, came in. I know when I was younger, I would at least hide behind the couch, and whoever knocked on the door can just stay there, and they can go away when they got bored. So just going, it was also my first time out of the country. So going to a different country and a different culture to where everything's so relaxed and chilled and everybody's so welcoming and everybody is just willing to talk. And, the state of Nicaragua is so much, if our standards, so much lower, the dirt roads and the way the houses are in the hospital. Yeah, it was quite an experience in realizing how well I have it here. I had an idea before going, but actually to go there and experience it was something else. And my first thoughts going to Nicaragua, I was wondering if I'd be not any good, but if it would be worth going, because I don't speak Spanish, and I could say going there, I really did wish I spoke Spanish because there wasn't a translator per person; it was per group. So when 30 children are running up to me asking me if I'm famous, and I can't communicate that I'm not, but 10 seconds later they're swarming me with notebooks asking for my autograph. And then they want everybody else's, so now they're chasing everybody around the room, getting everybody's autograph. It's it was a lot of fun. And when I did have a translator with me, it was tricky to break up bits of information, at least for me, and wait for translation. And so it took a couple tries for me to kind of get that down. And that was something I was worried about, not speaking Spanish. Would I be able to share the gospel well enough for them to understand, or would I be just kind of making them confused and more or less kind of wasting their time, you know? But the translators were there to help, and they popped in with anything they could, and it was a really good experience. We had some really good talks, and I guess for me throughout this week, I got to reaffirm that no matter how unqualified I may feel, God will use you and others to the best of your ability and His abilities in any situation to share the gospel.
So this is my Nicaraguan twin. This is Pastor Angel, and actually Charlie has a twin down there. His name is Lisandro. He's the worship leader. They're both tranquilo, very chill. Angel and I both have a weird and funky, weird side to us, and we can be muy serioso if we need to be, very serious, you know. And just to translate for you, you know. But anyway, I just wanted to share with you guys that the church there, and they don't just say this, I know, to everybody, but they see our church as their church, their other family. That's very true. And Angel, you know, when we're back at, so what happens is, you know, during the day, everybody wakes up. Just to give you an idea, everybody woke up and they'd have breakfast at their host family's house. And then we'd usually drive over and meet at the church building, and then you know, if we needed to take some things out with us that day, or grab several bottled waters, which we always had with us, and so on. But and we'd eat lunch together and eat dinner together, and then we'd all go back to our homes. Well, then when you're there back in the home, you know, you don't have your translator doesn't come sleep the place there unless you're Phil. You know, which, you know, Charlie, of course, Walter does speak English there. So, but anyway, so we're talking. Linda and I are there with Angel here and his wife Sobeda, and you know, what we can't actually say with actual words, we just mime. You know, you just kind of try to do your best. But and Angel and I laugh because even though I can't speak Spanish, I can think Spanish somewhat, which is really scary. And he and I kind of have this thing where we know what we're thinking, you know, and we think similarly too, which is, you know, probably very helpful. But he relayed to Linda and I again just how when our team comes down, doesn't matter what year it was, when our team comes down, he says, we know we can just be, he says, we know we can be relaxed with you. Nobody's uptight about things. And he really likes it that our team is focused in on sharing the gospel, not just helping with social things, which is important, but, you know, I think it's we want people to know how they can have a relationship with God, and we also want to help. So he really, really likes that, and so I think he's like, you know, we're kind of, our hearts beat the same, and so even though I know that, you know, not everybody goes or even wants to go, but you have helped in so many different ways with the provision of funds or the material things, and so you should know that they know about and appreciate the things that you have given, and I can't tell you how many times too they would say the things that you have brought are exactly what these people need, and so So you should just be encouraged by that, that you've participated in that, and so. And I have some other things I want to share, and I will here in a minute. But I also want to say, here, Lord willing, if we go in a couple years, be thinking about that, be thinking about, would the Lord have you participate in that? We start planning a year from when we go. So when I go to the pastors' conference in Great Commission for Great Commission churches this week, that's when I sat down with Gloria Perez at the pastors' conference, and I said, "Hey, are we going to get to go to Nicaragua because people were getting shot down there?" A year ago there was a lot of rioting and so on because of the political situation and so on. And by the way, you have to be careful about you just don't talk. You definitely don't talk politics down there. Okay. If you thought you didn't talk about it here, you don't talk about it down there because you don't know who's listening, okay? And you will be reported, okay, to Mr. Ortega, okay? And so I'm just saying that these are things that were. I guess I never told you guys that, but anyway. But anyway, yeah. So I tried to. And when we went down there, I don't know if you guys, so any of you parents went to the State Department website. It is the threat level 3 out of 4, which means reconsider going, right? Yeah. And so, but I knew, and we knew that we could trust their assessment of the situation. They would never send us into danger. So I was comfortable if they say, "Hey, yeah, no problem, come on." Yeah. So, but anyway, it takes a year to plan. We set a date. We see who's interested, usually by maybe the December before, and then we help people learn how to just write a fundraising letter or something. And so I'm just saying this because some of you may not know what that takes. And some people provide some from their own funds to go. Some people just send out letters to relatives. Some of you have helped finance the trip, but I really encourage you to pray about going. And I remember answering questions like this, and I'm sure probably some sitting here saying this too. Why don't you just send the money? Wouldn't that just be better? Wouldn't that be a more efficient use of funds? And Angel would say, don't even think about it, because they are so encouraged by you coming. Okay, like it's kind of like when Paul said, we mutually encourage each other's faith. That's what happens. That their faith to keep going on for the Lord and serving Him and doing kind of what we do here, but down there and in their context, they need encouragement. And they receive encouragement from our going and being there with them, and it helps. I mean, our church, our little church, which our church is about the same size as their church, roughly, and glory to God that we this trip here, we went up to a town called Hinotepe, which is you have to go up in elevation, which, praise God, it's cooler. I think, can we stay here? It felt like it was 70. I don't know what it was, but it felt like 70. And it was breezy and all this stuff. But in that location, in about a month, they're going to be starting a new church, and they've had some meetings every month, and they have a contact there who we kind of hung out with there for the day, and that's before I hit the dust that night, when I got sick. But it just no. I mean, these we helped them make contacts that day, and one of the things too that's very encouraging is that many of the people who prayed to receive Christ, at least I took down their name, and many people might not have anything, but a lot of people have a cell phone. Okay. And so you ask, can you have your contact information? So I kept passing on the church if you're interested. If you don't have a church you go to, sure, no problem. And so, there's follow-up and so on. So, which is great, which is important too, It's just a great experience. I would say for me, and I'll share, I don't have a sermon, I promise you. I did miss my one opportunity to speak. I was sick. I had a talk on parenting all prepared, and there was no talking going to happen for me. I can tell you that. I got food poisoning there. It was down for a good 2 days. But Dr. Walter Bonilla I was in great hands. He did everything. Yeah, it was great. I mean, both times when I've had trouble traveling abroad, one time with my foot infection, some of you remember back that far, that we knew people that the last thing I wanted to do was go to the hospital. I'm not going to the hospital unless Walter is sitting bedside 24/7. But anyway, share a couple things with you. Some scripture here. Let's see. I really just need to open the Bible there. This is 2 Corinthians chapter 4. That you guys on the team will remember these verses, I'm sure. But 2 Corinthians chapter 4. Starting in verse 5. I just happen to have the NLT version up here. It says, this is Paul. He says, "You see, we don't go around preaching about ourselves. We preach that Jesus Christ is Lord, and we ourselves are your servants for Jesus' sake. For God, who said, 'Let there be light,' in the darkness, has made this light shine in our hearts, so we could know the glory of God that is seen in the face of Jesus Christ." And just two things. I heard a message before I left for the trip, and the evangelist just shared these verses, and I was just reminded of the truth. In sharing our faith, we have to remember that we preach Christ. That's what we preach. I mean, you may not say it's preaching, but we're telling people about Jesus and why he came, and that he's the one and only solution to our problem of sin that separates us from God. And so we preach Christ. That's what we do. Okay, but then that's verse 5 there, 2 Corinthians 4:5. But verse 6 says, "For God, who said, 'Let there be light and darkness,' has made this light shine in our hearts." So God, though, his job, what he does, he opens blind eyes. We preach Christ, God opens blind eyes. But God has chosen that be the combination. Okay. Now, yes, God can intervene. People have dreams, about Jesus. I mean, yes, but I'm telling you, the norm and what Scripture tells us is we preach Christ, God opens blind eyes. See, so like it says there, only God can awaken in a person the ability to see how wonderful Jesus is. That's what it means when it says he has this light shine in our hearts so that we could know the glory of God that is seen in the face of Jesus. To some people, Jesus is not, they don't want anything to do with him because they're not seeing the glory of Christ. That's because they have blind eyes. They're blind. And so it's just a good reminder that that is our job, and this is God's job in sharing our faith. And as Charlie shared, I think it was on Friday, Charlie and Jake and Caleb led the worship there. And actually, I saw Walter went Facebook Live with it from the church there, which is awesome. And they led the worship there Friday night. Friday night's kind of like they say, "Hey, this is your night, Darby Creek." I'm like, okay, great. This is, which I didn't have a problem with the music. It was just kind of like, I hope they like what we got. They want us to salsa. That could be a train wreck. But anyway, so they led worship. They did a great job. Picked 3 songs that we all knew, and both that they knew in their language, we knew in ours, and it's a beautiful thing if you've ever experienced that, worshiping where they're singing in their language and you in yours, but because you're on the same song, it's just very nice, awesome. But Charlie shared that night just the Romans 1:16, "For I'm not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation," right? So, it's good to be able to share the reasonableness of our faith, and that's important, but realize at the end of the day, unless the Holy Spirit's working, there ain't nothing happening, okay? So So it was just a good reminder for me of that. And then the one last thing here I was reminded of, and I think I do have it printed off here, was, if we want to see lives transformed and people come to life spiritually, it oftentimes requires a death in us. Okay? In other words, we have to die to ourselves and our desires and our, I'd rather not, whatever it might be, so that others can experience life. And so I was reminded of this in 1 Corinthians 4 here, verses 11 and 12, where Paul says, "For we who are alive are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake." And so he's, of course, that's not a literal thing. He's just saying we're going through hell here, basically. We're suffering. We're all kinds of difficulty, and he said it's for Jesus' sake. But then he says, so that his life may also be revealed in our mortal body. In other words, as we lay down our lives, lay aside our agenda and so on, as we die to ourselves, the life of Jesus is manifest in us. It actually is. He's able to do the work he needs to do. And, we're always, it should have a sign on our hearts that say under construction, right? And if we're willing, right? And so that's it. We die through circumstances, through, our situations, or some of them are our own doing, some of them others' doing, whatever. But we die to ourselves so that the life of Christ might be manifest in us. And then verse 12 says, so then, death is at work in us, but life is at work in you. And so he's telling the Corinthians, listen, we're dying to ourselves, but we're doing it for you, so that you could live, so that you could hear the gospel, so that you can grow. You see the life of Christ at work in us, and you see this death-life thing happening in us, and we pray, and God, he transforms you, and we see the life going into you. And that's how it works, right? It sounds counter, right? That you have to live, you have to die, but that's the way it is, right? So anyway, I was just reminded of those things when we were there, and we appreciate your guys' prayers the entire time we're there. We definitely felt them, and does anybody have anything else you want to share? Okay. All right. Well, how about if I pray? And I realized I forgot to pray earlier, and there's no problem. God's got no problem with that. We'll pray right now. Okay. Lord, we just thank you for the church family here and the participation in this trip, whether financially or donated items or actually going on the trip. And Lord, we thank you, and thank you that I believe you were glorified as people. I know you were glorified as people came to faith, and I believe you're glorified as the church was encouraged and built up there, and Lord, I just I pray that as a church, Lord, that you would help us grow in our passion for you and our love for you, and we want to grow deeper in it, and we also want to be able to not be afraid to share the love of Christ and the message of the gospel with those that we love and that you put us near. And so, Lord, help us to love our neighbor in that way. And so we just thank you for this time, Lord, and thank you that you brought everybody back safely, and we're so thankful, and our hearts are overflowing. In Jesus' name, amen.